Let me know when you record. Oh, it's recording. Okay, good. Okay. Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Leanne Brooks, and I'm going to be teaching this class, the lecture portion of it. So just to kind of give you a quick explanation of how it's going to work this semester, because I do have a full-time job outside of this. Most of the time, if I'm working from home, I'm going to try to make it like live, like today. But there may be times where I have to kind of pre-record a lecture, and Tom will get all of that posted. And then if I'm traveling or super busy, you may even see like a recorded lecture from last year pop up. So if one shows up and all of a sudden my hair has grown like 8 inches overnight, that's from last year. But so just kind of wanted to explain that to you so you didn't always expect to see me in person. Hopefully I'll be able to be in person as much as I can. But if you do have a recorded lecture or something and you have any questions during class, just jot those down and feel free to email me. But hopefully I can be live quite a bit of the time. So I kind of thought if we could quickly, before I jump through the syllabus and everything, just kind of quickly go around to the different sites and just everybody kind of introduce themselves really fast. Is that cool? Can we do that, Tom?
Yes.
Okay. We can start with whichever site wants to go first. It doesn't matter to me.
Just start with Keysville since I'm already here and talking and the camera's here.
There you go. So just a little bit about yourself, like your name, where you're from, like what your program is, or whatever you want to say. It doesn't have to be super long.
I'm Colton, and I live like going to Chase City and Boyden area.
And live on a farm.
Oh yeah, I live on a farm and everything, like with goats and stuff. And yeah.
Oh, cool! I love goats.
And your favorite donut is?
Lemonfield.
Lemonfield, okay.
Yeah.
That works.
My name is Casey, and I live in Keysville. And I'm actually switching programs to doing agribusiness when I finish here. I'm going to marine biology at OU.
Oh, cool. That'd be cool.
My name is Faith Seamster. I live in Peru, and I'm studying biology and veterinarian.
Awesome.
Okay, Yusuf, jump in.
Okay, my name is Yusuf Muhammad. My family owns 2 chicken houses and have 19,000 chickens each flock. We know nothing about chickens though.
Well, time to what?
You figure it'd be good to learn what we're actually doing for once.
Yeah, that's funny. Where do you live?
We live down in Virginia, around the Southampton County area.
Okay.
That is all.
No, that's fine. Are you contract growers for anybody, or you just...
Yeah, we're working under Purdue.
Oh, okay. Very, very nice.
Do you know where the old Purdue chicken plant is there on 58 in Emporia?
Yes.
Yes, I was asking Yusuf. Do you know where that is?
No.
No, okay. If you start heading west out of Emporia, there's a Purdue chicken plant there on the left. South side, once they shut that plant down, we actually had classes in that building for several years, and it still smelled like chicken. I was teaching there probably my first 3 years here before they built that nice, wonderful building you're in now. So just think your classroom could smell like the backside of your farm. Enjoy it. Enjoy the fresh air.
I will.
Good. Okay, Megan, how about you?
My name's Megan. We have a family farm in Scottsburg in this area. It's probably about 30 minutes from South Austin. I have 2 horses. I have a pig. I showed a calf this past livestock show. I actually showed a steer and a heifer. I'm a 7-year FFA member. I've competed in, I don't even know how many different competitions. I actually won 2nd in the state of Virginia through Block and Bridle and livestock judging.
Awesome. I was in Block and Bridle.
So was I.
Yeah, that's right. You were.
Yes. Cool. Okay, Alberta, somebody jump in. Jonathan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm not in the frame though. All right. Hey, Steve. How you doing? I'm Jonathan from Dundas. All right, you got to look real hard on the map to find it. Okay. but it's down south.
I've been through Dundas. I'm from Lunenburg, so I know where you're at.
Well, I'm in the agribusiness program. That's pretty much it. All right.
I'm Carrie. I'm also from Douglas. I don't even know if you mentioned, which is surprising because you know pretty much everybody that lives in Douglas. But I live on a family farm too. We grow soybeans, corn, and we have a pumpkin patch we do every October. And we have a couple cows, a few goats, a couple pigs, a few chickens, and most of those are just pets pretty much. But we do get eggs from the chickens every day or so. So yeah. And I'm in the agribusiness program too.
Okay.
My name is Wyatt Smith. I'm from Boydton, or I live in there. Live in Boydton. And I'm just a curious learner.
Good.
But yeah, I guess that and this class is right after plant science, so
Gotcha. Nice.
I'm Logan Owen from little town Skipper, Virginia. We've got a farm, mostly beef cattle, and a little bit of wheat and tobacco soybeans.
Okay.
My name is Berkeley, and I live in Jarrett, which is about 10 miles north of Emporia, and I live on the farm also.
Awesome. Okay. Well, it's nice to meet all of y'all. Is that everybody there? And it looks like maybe some cut off that I've heard of. Is that everybody?
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. Well, it's very nice to meet all of y'all. I just kind of wanted to do that so I can kind of start somewhat putting faces with the names. So actually on Blackboard as well, there's a little introduction kind of in the discussion board area that if you want to kind of do that, just tell me a little bit about yourself. There's a couple like questions there. Last year, some people put pictures, and that's great because it kind of helps me like match your face to your name. So if you want to do that, and then you can kind of go there, see who else is in the class, and I get to know you really well that way. And I also like to kind of see what people are interested in because last year, you know, some things they were interested in kind of helped me tailor my lectures a little bit. So that's always helpful as well. But so before we jump into any material today, I'm going to quickly go through just some key points on the syllabus. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. Let me pull that up. Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, hang on a second before you get started. In Alberta, in the desk, the teacher's desk in front of the classroom in the center drawer, there is a manila folder that says AGR141 on it. If you go to that folder, and I've got copies of the syllabuses in there for everybody. For those of you in South Boston and Emporia, due to the Blackboard thing, I was spending my time trying to fix it, so I did not end up getting.
Yep, yeah.
But we will have it linked to in Blackboard for you to print or something.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we got it.
Well, for those of you that are getting printed copies, that probably happened before I made a quick edit this morning. So the last page where you're supposed to sign, I had forgotten to fill in the course number and everything. So somewhere in that sentence, it probably says English 112.
I fixed that for you.
Thank you. Okay, I realized that this morning, and I was like, I totally did not edit this page. But it's fixed on Blackboard now. But so if you see that, don't be confused. Okay, so I'm just going to hit a couple of things. So obviously, this is AGR141. So if you're not here for this class, then now would be the time to leave. I know in college, people always instructors always said that, and I was like, well, how are you in the wrong? But we would have people that were completely in the wrong class. So it's Introduction to Animal Science and Technology, and it's obviously going to be a 16-week session. So the lecture part is going to meet on Mondays and Wednesdays from 10:30 to 11:50. And then the labs, and Tom can kind of tell me if I'm wrong, are going to be alternate Fridays.
Mostly. Yeah, there may be a gap where we've got 3 weeks between them, but mostly it's every other Friday.
Okay, so Tom will probably keep you posted on the lab situation. As far as labs, I believe, like last year, Tom, I'll probably be grading the lab reports, but Tom and then possibly Dixie will be actually running the labs. So for any questions about lab time, like where you're supposed to meet, anything like that, direct those more towards Tom, because he would have more information than I would about that. And then any questions about like your reports or anything, you can kind of direct towards me. Anything else you want to say about the labs, Tom?
When the time comes, we'll have, and we'll give you plenty of notice on that. We haven't finalized the schedule, but we'll hopefully get that to you this week. There's not going to be one this Friday. And I'd say there's a pretty good chance it won't be next Friday, because next Friday is the beginning of Labor Day weekend. So, but don't hold me to that one yet. But when we get the schedule finalized, we'll let you know as soon as we can. We'll have a handout, and I have it posted, all the dates and stuff in Blackboard. Generally what we'll do is we'll meet in Alberta, we'll meet in Keysville, and somebody will be running a van from each of the two main campuses to go to wherever the locations are. Megan from South Boston, I imagine you come up here and meet us here in Keysville. Yusef, I guess, would show up at Alberta. But there again, and you're welcome to drive directly to these lab things as you want to. Like Kerry, for the one lab, all he has to do is get up and walk out the back door of his house, because one of the places we'll be going to is their family farm. So, whatever makes you happy, but you need to let us know if you're going to be coming, and I'll give you plenty of warning on what time we're leaving, how long we expect to be gone, and all that kind of stuff. Some of these labs will be gone from like 9 to 2. Some of them, like when we go to the state fair, we might not get back here until 6, 7. And then that one trip that we went last year, way out at the northern neck of Virginia, it was like 9 o'clock, I think, when we got back, or something like that. But that's only going to be like 1 or 2 of them that were gone that long. But if you can't make a lab trip, we'll have alternatives that you can do, where you try to basically do what we do on a lab trip, but you got to do it on your own, kind of thing, to get the experience. But it's better if you can do it with us, so you hear other questions that other people ask and that kind of stuff. Maybe other people are thinking about things differently than the way you would. And the other little bit of encouragement I want to give is, I encourage you to come to these lab trips, because y'all have heard the expression about it's not what you know, it's who you know, as far as getting jobs and that kind of stuff. Well, who are going to be the leaders in agribusiness around here 5, 10, 15 years from now, other than the people that are in the classrooms with you now, the people that will be on these lab trips. So it's an opportunity for you to get to meet and network and get to know the people that will be in charge of stuff here in the next few years. So you can get to know Faith, and she's going to be a large animal vet in a few years. You get to know her and that kind of stuff, and maybe she'll remember who you are. And will you give anybody a discount? She's shaking her head yes, but don't believe her. She's got that look in her eyes. I don't trust her.
That now, but
yes, yeah, you say that now. Wait until those college loan bills start coming in.
Yeah.
But just so, by all means, please come. Even if you can't come to all of them, come to as many of them as humanly possible. And you online people, that goes for you too. You're expected to do that, come to them. But I'll talk more to y'all here in a minute or two if Miss Leanne doesn't. So that's it on labs for now. More to follow.
Okay. Yeah, and Tom, if I miss anything, jump in. So don't feel free to just jump in there if I'm missing something important.
Okay.
So email addresses are listed right there. You will see that my email address says Kayla. That's my first name. I actually go by Leanne, but for official purposes, my email is Kayla. So sorry that's kind of confusing, but it is me. And so you can just address me as Leanne in the email, or Kayla if you want to. I don't really use it, but that is my email address. As far as office hours, obviously I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, so I don't think any of you want to come to my home office. So email will work really well. I'm pretty good about checking it and getting back to you as soon as I can. So if you have any questions or anything, just always email me for anything. So I'm not going to really read you the course description or the learning outcomes or anything, because you all need to read through that on your own. You don't need me to read it word for word. For the textbook, I do recommend that you get the Fundamentals of Animal Science by Colin Skanes. Pretty much all of the material that is going to be on the exams will come from my lecture notes. So it says required, but I would say if I'm going to kind of leave that up to you all. I think it would be good because I'm going to basically be going through the chapters in that book to kind of read ahead. It'll give you a little bit more information, a little more than kind of the high points I'm hitting on my lecture notes. But I'm not going to pull information from the book to put on the exam that's not in my notes. Everything on the exams will come from my PowerPoint slides. So that's kind of up to y'all whether you want to get the book or not. But I do recommend it. It's a good book, and it has quite a bit of good information. So then the learning outcomes, which I'll let you go through. So course evaluation and requirements. So your final course grade is just going to be calculated based on this point system. So you're going to have 4 exams, and they're going to be worth 300 points total, so 75 points each. And then your assignments will all equal 50 points. So you'll probably have like maybe 5 assignments. I think last year I had like 4, but that'll all add up to 50. And then your lab reports as well will all add up to 50 points. Anything you want to jump in, Tom, with the lab reports?
Details on what we're looking for will be in Blackboard. So, yeah.
So exams, like I said, there'll be 4 exams that are going to be given throughout the semester. So each exam, the first 3 exams will kind of cover that section that we've worked on. And then the final exam will be a cumulative exam that will cover all of the material that we've been through in the semester. So I think it's kind of a good way to wrap up. So the exams will be given in class. If you're an online student, you will have a week to take it, and you will need to go to either like an on-campus proctored site, or if you can't make it to a campus to take it, then we'll need to set up kind of a proctor situation with you, and there are forms and everything. And I'll kind of get more information about that to you later when it gets a little bit closer to time. But we'll get that set up early in the semester for those students that will need a proctor. So if you need to miss an exam, please get approval from me before the exam so that I can try to work something out with you so that you can still take it. Because if you kind of come to me after the exam and say like, oh, well, I had something going on and I missed it, it's like I can't really help you once the exam has been given out to the other students because they've seen it. So if you need to miss it and you have something going on, I know last year people had like I think a livestock show or something they had to go to, just let me know. I can be really flexible with that if you just keep me posted on what's going on. Assignments are to be turned in on the due date electronically. All of your assignments will be posted in Blackboard, and I'll always remind you either through announcements or if I can meet with you live, I'll remind you about dates for assignments. And so always be checking Blackboard to make sure that you're up to date on those. And they'll be assigned during class or labs. Points will be deducted for late assignments, and I'll kind of go into that in a second when I get to late work. Quizzes, there may be like a few quizzes, but those will most likely count as an assignment if there are. I think last year I kind of had like maybe 1 quiz type assignment, so there will be no makeups for those. The grading scale, this is probably similar to what you have in your other classes, is just a 10-point grading scale. So you can see that there. I don't think you really need me to break that down for you. Attendance policy, obviously, if you're in class, you're going to be getting the information and probably doing better than if you're not coming to class, except for you online students, obviously, but you need to watch the lectures. And so then that just kind of goes into the college attendance policy. So that is set. So if I see that you haven't, logged on as an online student, or if you've missed in-class sections, I will have to drop you because we don't want you to get charged for a class if you're not coming. So I'll have to drop you by a certain deadline if you're not making the attendance requirements. For instructional activities, the lecture material is going to be PowerPoint slides, and that'll be, like I said, based off material in the book mainly. And then there's some stuff that I've added from other sources. During lectures, obviously questions and any class discussions are encouraged. Feel free to stop me at any point during my lectures and ask questions, because I'm kind of the type of person where when I think of something, I kind of need to say it right then before I forget it. So feel free to do that. Discussion board, like I mentioned, there's kind of an introduction discussion board already there. So this will be used for introductions during this first week. And then for like each exam, I'll have a discussion board there for like exam 1 questions or whatever, where you can kind of post questions and I can respond to you, or other students can respond to you to kind of help you prepare for the exam. So that's really just for your benefit. Okay, assignments, I already kind of talked about. Submit electronically. Be sure to include your name in the file name so that I know who's sending it, because that way when I download it, it has your name on it. That would be really, really helpful. Email, like I said, feel free to email me at any point in time. As far as late makeup work, there will be no makeup quizzes or exams. Like I said, if you need to miss an exam, get approval prior to missing that exam. Unless, you know, an emergency comes up and something happens and you can provide documentation, you know, that was an emergency and you had to go to the hospital or whatever, obviously we'll be flexible with that. But if it is something that you know ahead of time, please let us know. Late assignments will be accepted up to a week after the due date, and there will be a 2-point deduction for each day past the due date. And so 2 points may not seem like a lot, but if an assignment is worth 10 points and you're a day late, that's already taken you down to an 80. So it's not like 2 points off of 100 and you're at a 98. So just to make that clear, that you do want to get those assignments in on time. And I'll usually give you at least a week, sometimes more, to work on those assignments. And they're not going to be assignments that will take you very long. So really try to get those done by the due date so you don't lose points there. And then the honor standards, I'll let you read. I'm sure that's on every syllabus that you've been through today. Faculty email response time, like I said, I will do my best to return an email to you. Usually I'm pretty fast, like within, I mean, if you send in a reasonable time frame, within a few hours, unless I'm traveling. But we are supposed to get you a response within 48 hours. So email me for any questions. And this is all the just inclement weather info that's on every syllabus that you've seen probably. I'm just going to scroll down. So then this is just the schedule. If you kind of want to look at it, I have the dates in there for what chapters we're going to be covering which week. And then some important dates, like your exam dates are already on there, so you can kind of start planning ahead, especially if you're online and you need to set up a time that you'll come take it. For the online students, what I typically do is that the exam opens on that day. So the exam would open for online students on September 12th, and it would be open for a week following that. Unfortunately, that means for the in-class students, I can't go over the lecture exam until after everyone online has taken it, so you'll have to wait a week for that. But we do need to give those students flexibility to have time to come in and take it. So that's how that will work. And then it just has a couple of other dates on here if you have any info. And these may change just depending on if school is closed one day or anything. I mean, you all know things happen, so this is kind of just a guideline that we'll shoot for. But I will try my best, unless something happens, to stick to the exam days so that you have those ahead of time. Okay, and then just this last page is for you to sign and acknowledge that you read the syllabus. And I did update that this morning, so it no longer says English 112. Does anybody have any questions on the syllabus or anything at all that I've gone over so far? All good? Anything you want to add, Tom? Anything I missed?
Yeah, there's 2 things. Number one, for you online, well, actually, this is both for you online people that are listening. You online people are responsible for listening to the recordings, watching the recordings, because she's going to talk about stuff that's not in the book. There's stuff in the book that she doesn't talk about. You need to listen to the recordings. You're going to be responsible for that information that she discusses, whether it's in the book or not. We record all of the classes, and I've got a class right after this. So generally on the class days, I'll get the recordings posted about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Because I get out of my class at 1:30, and then the first thing I do is I go over there and I convert them and I upload them and that kind of stuff. There'll be a video version in YouTube. There'll be an audio version. There's going to be a link that says class recordings in Blackboard that you can click it and it'll bring you to a web page. It's going to have the names of, it'll have the audio files and then a link to the YouTube playlist. This stuff won't be active. The links won't be active until this afternoon, because right now it has last year's playlist, because I can't make a new playlist until I have a video to go in there. If you seated students, if you miss class, your first thing is, instead of shooting into us an email, what did I miss? Your first thing is to go watch or listen to the recording. That's why a big reason why we do them is so you can catch what you miss. And I guess maybe for you online students, if you agree, Leanne, we can like put a discussion board. It's something I do is a syllabus acknowledgement discussion board thread. And so the online people, they can write a discussion post saying I've read the syllabus and I agree to follow it.
Yeah, I can do that. That'd be easy.
Printing it and emailing it and that kind of stuff or whatever for the online people so they can acknowledge it.
I'll do that. I'll get that done today right after class. I'll set that up so they can do that.
Okay, cool. I think that's all I had for that, but anyway, but you online students, you got to watch the recordings, so enjoy.
Yeah, definitely watch the recordings. And another thing, just to kind of like go off what Tom said, make sure that you stay up to date on recordings. I've taken online classes before, and I know that it's easy to kind of put it off until you get closer to the exam, but you don't want to be watching a whole bunch of recordings like 2 days before the exam. So try to stay like as current as you can. And also, like, I'll try to do reviews the lecture before the exam. So if you're up to date, then you can make sure that you get that review information too before you take the test. So, yeah.
A disclaimer: if you're going to listen to the audio version on your phone while you're driving down the road, I would not recommend you doing that at 2 o'clock in the morning, just because we want everybody to be safe.
Probably fall asleep.
You know, you my hero, Leanne. I hate to say that though.
No, I mean it's true. I mean I wouldn't listen to any class lecture at 2 a.m. I'd be going to sleep.
Yes.
Okay, so let me pull up. So whenever I do the share screen thing, the little like share bar covers everything I need to click on my screen.
Of course.
Okay. Did that come up okay? Can everybody see the lecture notes? Okay. All right, so this is just your book cover. So if you're looking for the book in the bookstore, this is what it looks like.
Remember, I'm in the middle of a class at the moment. I call on a switchboard at 434-949-1000, and they can put you through to work.
So this is just the cover of your book if you're looking for it to make it easier. So the first section that we're going to start with is section 1, which is animals and society. And so before we jump in, I'm just going to give you a little bit more background on myself, since I kind of did that very briefly. So I'm from Victoria, Virginia, which I'm sure some of you have probably heard of if you live in like Dundas especially. Victoria is a little bit bigger. We do have a stoplight. So Monterey County, yeah, I'm bragging about that one stoplight because that's pretty much a big deal. Yeah, so I'm from there. I went to Central Senior High School for high school, and I actually went to governor's school at the Daniel campus, so I'm kind of familiar with that site in Keysville. And you all are very lucky because you're across the road from Ethel's, which is amazing. So just a little of where I'm from. So after high school, I went to Virginia Tech to get my bachelor's degree in animal and poultry science. And so while I was there, like Tom and I mentioned earlier, I was in Black and Bridle, which puts on a big livestock show every year, which some of you may have been involved in or may have been to. I was also in Sigma Alpha, which is a professional agriculture sorority, and I was a teaching assistant in undergrad because I really, really like to teach, so I kind of started getting into that fairly early. After I did my bachelor's degree, I wasn't ready to leave Blacksburg because it's an amazing place, so I decided to stay at Virginia Tech and do my master's degree. Also in animal and poultry science because at Virginia Tech they're kind of combined. And so my master's was kind of in developmental nutrition, using pigs as a model for human infants, testing infant formula. But I really, really wanted to stay on the livestock side of things. Right? And so I decided to go to NC State to get my PhD in animal nutrition. I specifically work with monogastric nutrition, which we'll talk about what monogastrics are if you don't already know what that is later. But I work with pigs. So I work with hog producers in North Carolina mainly and the Southeast. So I just finished up my PhD in December. Tom can recall last year I was actually in the process of finishing that up while I was teaching, so it was very, very crazy. But I did finish that, and I am currently a consulting swine nutritionist for hog producers in the Southeast. So basically, I'm working with my boss, who is an older man who's been in the industry for a long time, and learning how to do their feed formulation and things like that. So we do a lot of on-farm troubleshooting, and I handle their feed formulation based on prices of corn and wheat and things like that. Any troubleshooting like at their feed mill where their feed is made, I kind of have to understand all of that. So I'm actually out in the field a lot. I go in feed mills and I go in farms very regularly. And then I travel to conferences and things like that. And so I really like working with producers. It's been really, really rewarding. So that is what I do in my full-time job. And in addition, I do have that, because I went to industry, I really, really like to teach. I was a teaching assistant all through grad school for intro to animal poultry science at Tech. I was undergrad teaching assistant for anatomy and physiology. And then at NC State, I was a teaching assistant for animal nutrition in the animal nutrition labs for 3 years. And so there's a part of me that really, really likes to teach, and I don't really get to do that in my job now. So that's why I do love the opportunity to teach you all in this class every fall. So just a little bit of my background. And so then I just threw these up there because, as Tom mentioned, I think Alberta missed it because y'all weren't on yet, but you will see my dog and probably my cat at some point because I'm teaching from my home office. So we have Trigger there is my big black lab German Shepherd mix. He's a 95-pound baby. He's like 5.5, but he has not grown up at all, as you can kind of see from his little puppy face. Last year, he kind of made a surprise appearance during one of my lectures. So this year, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce you to him. So you may see him at some point. And then in the middle, these are in no particular order, by the way. That's me and my husband. We just got married May 30th of this year. Actually, we eloped in Montana, which was beautiful. If you ever get the chance to go to Montana, highly recommend it. So we've been together like 6 years. We met in undergrad, and pretty awesome. So that's a picture from our Montana trip on a hike that we did. And then over there, a ruler of all things evil, also known as my cat, is Little Cat, we call her, because she's actually a super tiny cat. The vet calls her Pocket Cat. So we just started calling her Little Cat. She doesn't look that small in the picture, but she's pretty tiny. So anyway, just thought I'd go ahead and introduce you to them. She may walk by. She likes to try to walk on my keyboard when I'm trying to teach. Trigger likes to be loud. So you may see them. So now you know who they are. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the lecture today. So we're just going to kind of do like a brief introduction lecture about what animal science is, why it's important, and then a little bit of the history of it. And so this lecture has some like kind of historical details to it, just to kind of get you set up for the rest of it. After we kind of get this one out of the way, we'll get more into like the actual science part of it and biology and things like that. So this lecture, just to go ahead and say, it may be one of the not so super interesting lectures. I'll just say it, because I like the more science-based ones. But this is just to give you some introduction background so that you can understand the rest of the stuff that's coming. So what is animal science to start with? So when you look up what is animal science, there are a lot of ways that people kind of define it. So this is kind of a combined definition that I've come up with. And so basically, to me, animal science is the study of the scientific principles that underlie the breeding and husbandry of agricultural animals and the production and distribution of animal products. So it actually encompasses a wide range of things. So it's everything that goes into producing an animal, and then even all the way out to the distribution of those meat products or other animal byproducts or anything. So there's a lot that kind of this definition encompasses. And so be familiar with this definition for sure. I'll just go ahead and say that. So why do we need to study animal science? Why is it important? So a big driver of why animal science and agriculture in general is important is that the world population is increasing at a staggering rate. And so countries are becoming more developed, which means that people are eating more meat. There's also, because countries are becoming more developed and there are more buildings and things going up like that, there has been a loss of farmland. And we can see that like all over the globe, really. So animal production needs to be more efficient than ever because we need to feed more people and produce more, but actually work with less. And so understanding the science behind this and how we can affect that is really crucial. So chapter 1, I'm just going to give you an introduction to world population and how things are changing with that and why that's important. Hunger, and then, of course, the importance in agriculture and how that all plays in. So the world population is currently over 7.5 billion people, and it is growing at a rate of 1.2% per year. So that's pretty fast when you take 1.2% of 7.5 billion. So between 1960 and 2007, the world population grew by 3.6 billion people. And so the growth rate is slowing a little bit. However, the total population of the world is still expected to reach 10 million by 2050. And this is a rule that I will say everyone in the industry that I meet at conferences, everybody talks about it. Every presentation talks about feeding the 10 billion by 2050. It's our goal, and it is the main goal of agriculture. And so everything, feeding all those people is what fuels what we do. So just so you can kind of see it out on a chart, this just shows you the world population from 1950 and then how it's projected to increase all the way out to 2050. So you can see that by 2050, we'll pretty much easily hit that 10 billion mark. And so this was from the Census Bureau as of last year. I doubt that it's changed that much this year. It's still projected to be about 10 billion. So another reason that agriculture is extremely important is because world hunger is a really big issue. So sometimes I'm sure we don't always think about it because we're very fortunate to live in a place where we have access to a lot of different options in the grocery store, and we have a lot of ways to get food and things like that. However, more than 800 million people, mainly in like Africa, Asia, Latin America, do not get enough to eat. And in 1960, there were about approximately 3 billion people whose average caloric intake was 2,000 kilocalories per day in the developing world. And so then in 1998, as you can see, 38 years later, there were 6 billion people eating 2,700 kilocalories per day in the developing world. So as you can see, there are not only more people, but more people are consuming more food per person. So it's a really, really big deal. So as I talked about the loss of farmland, urbanization is another big thing that's contributing to why animal science is so important and why making farms more efficient is more important. There's been tremendous growth of cities, especially in the developing world. And so when we think of the developing world, that's like countries that are still kind of developing. So like America would be developed already. Developing world is kind of places that are still growing and kind of being more urbanized and things like that. So like Tokyo in Japan, Mexico City, and so you can see like all of the people that are growing in these cities, and Mumbai, India, New York, Sao Paulo, Brazil. And so by 2030, the world population that lives in urban areas will grow to 5 billion, creating mega cities. So it's not just a fact of like we have an expanding population, it's most of that population is living in cities. And so you have urban areas that need to hold all of these people, and so they have to start expanding out and maybe taking some of the farmland. So it becomes a really big problem. Actually, I just heard I have a friend in China, and they were saying that I believe it's near Beijing that they're starting to pay people more to actually take jobs outside of the city because the city is like so at capacity that it can't hold all of those people, and it's just so much pollution and everything. Because this is a really big problem, these kind of mega cities with so many people in one area. The U.S. population is 302 million with a 0.9% growth rate, and that number is probably just a little bit old, so it's probably higher now. The rate of population growth was much greater, actually, in the early history of the U.S. So between 1660 and 1880, the U.S. population had a growth rate of 3%. So we've come down from that really big growth rate to 0.9%. But if you kind of think about it, a while ago, like people, I feel like had more kids a lot of the time, and like way back in like the 1600s. So kind of makes sense. So in the U.S., urban areas do continue to grow. I live in Raleigh, so I can attest to that. It is getting bigger and more spread out every single year. Houses are becoming more and more expensive, even outside of the city, because it's just all the cities are moving out. So agricultural lands, unfortunately, are being replaced by residential subdivisions, and those are developed using larger lots that are surrounded by like mega malls, office parks, restaurants, and the new roads are being put in. And so all of that is going to be taking land that's needed for farming. So people tend to vote with their feet is kind of the expression how the book puts it. So that means they'll move to new subdivisions, and then they'll start shopping in new stores, eat at new restaurants, work in office parks, things like that. And so I will definitely say that's true. Like in this area in Raleigh, it's kind of like no matter what section of the city you live in, you have everything you need pretty much within 5 minutes. So it's not kind of like, think of like when I lived in Victoria, and it's like you have one grocery store that you have to drive across town to get to or anything like that. It's kind of like there are all these little subdivisions where everything is there. So there are concerns about urban sprawl, obviously, and loss of farmland comes with that. And so the term smart growth is used to kind of talk about growth that's focused in land communities that have like a town center and high population densities. So that can be kind of beneficial because it allows for walking or bicycling to stores, work, or other activities, and greater use of public transportation systems. So it's kind of similar to new urbanism concept of communities where people live, work, and play kind of all within that same area. And I will kind of say I think Europe does a much better job of this than we do. I was in Europe in December, and pretty much almost everybody in the cities there walks or bikes. Like, and their public transportation system is way better than ours. Like in America, you have to have a car pretty much to get around. But it's kind of good that way because you don't have as many cars and things like that impacting the environment. So America could do a better job of this, in my opinion. So now I'm going to talk about what's called greenfield development. And so this is when a housing development like a mall or factory is constructed on agricultural or other land that has not previously been developed. So I kind of think of it as like green is like new, and the land hasn't really been developed for anything as far as urbanization or anything like that. It's just really, really good farmland. So the advantages of this are that there are no issues of contamination because the land really hasn't been touched. It's new and it's green. And it's also less costly than brownfield development, which we're going to talk about next. The brownfield development is another type of land development. And so brownfield development is new development that is on land that was previously used for factories. Basically, like if you're tearing down a factory just to build something else. That's brownfield development because that land isn't like new and pristine and green anymore. So the disadvantage of this is that you have significant contamination of soil with chemicals. And so that's something to look at. So it's going to be more costly to develop on that land than it would be on land that hasn't previously had factories on it. So if you think about it and you're going to build something and it's less costly to take some farmland or land that could be used for farmland, that's kind of what people are probably going to do. So it's contributing to that loss of farmland for agriculture. So hunger in the world is a big issue. So the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that there were 840 million undernourished people, and that was in 2002. That number may be larger now. So most people who receive inadequate nutrition live in the developing world, like we talked about, kind of like Africa and Latin America, places like that, India. And so there are a lot of issues that are linked to hunger and undernutrition and malnutrition. So there are low birth weight babies, which will have higher mortality as kids, higher infant mortality. And if you're undernourished, impaired neural and cognitive development, so brain development and things like that. Hungry children are inattentive and do not learn well, and so that can also set back these countries when you have undernourished kids that are trying to go and learn and make their country better. It's like they can't, you can't really focus and be attentive when you're hungry. So it kind of just contributes to the problem. And then also reduced growth and then stunting of the bones and everything. So the Millennium Development Goals, there was a United Nations Millennium Declaration in 2000, and the first goal was to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. So in 1990, there were approximately 815 million people that were hungry or got inadequate nutrition. And also in that same year, about 29% of all people in the world lived on less than $1 per year. So just think about that number for a second. And so kind of like how I was talking about in countries that are developing and the kids are not getting enough nourishment, how they can't really pay attention and things like that, this kind of leads into this idea that hunger can actually cause poverty. So about 45%, almost half of the children in India are malnourished or underweight. And so that malnourishment can result in reduced adult productivity in a number of countries by about 3% of gross domestic product, which is kind of just, you don't really have to worry about exactly what that means. But it causes reduced productivity in their adult life. So hunger is caused by poverty, but hunger can also be a cause of poverty because these people can't kind of contribute to the gross domestic product for their country and kind of get things turned around. So food security is also a big thing when it comes to agriculture. So the definition of food security is that food security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. And so that is a really, really big thing, and there are several different key words in that definition, like sufficient and safe. Safe is a big one that's kind of a big topic these days because people freak out about hormones and GMOs and all of these things. And so safe and nutritious are big parts of that definition. And so according to the FAO, about 40% of the world's population actually raises their own food, which is pretty impressive. So how does the importance of agriculture and animal science kind of come into all of this? So there have been tremendous amounts of progress in the ability of the world's farmers to be able to produce food for this growing population. And this is due to large increases in total agriculture production and production efficiency. And I would like to say I cannot stress the production efficiency enough, because when you have to produce more on less, the only way that you're going to do that is by becoming more efficient at what you're doing. And so in my job, everything is efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. Can't say it enough. If we're going to feed the 10 billion by 2050, then we've got to be more efficient with what we have. So the Green Revolution has had a dramatic impact on people's lives in the developing world. So not to be confused with greenfield development, because apparently everyone likes to use green. This is the Green Revolution that we're talking about now. So the Green Revolution is using improved genetics for agriculture. So an easy way to kind of keep this straight is like green genetics both start with G's in my mind. I don't know. I just like to share little tips. I don't know if it's helpful for you or not, but that's how I kind of remember things. So this is using improved genetics for agriculture, which is a huge thing. So I'm assuming that most of you all know or have heard the term GMO, right? Maybe. Does everybody know what GMOs are? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Sort of getting some yeses here, but they're not really enthusiastic.
Right, I can't like see on my screen. So GMOs are, the term is genetically modified organisms, and everyone kind of freaks out about it and thinks that that means that it's not safe or anything like that. I could go off on that soapbox all day. But GMOs or genetics are a really, really good way to improve agriculture production. So they're not scary, and it's nothing to be afraid of. And like, you don't need to go to the grocery store and pay way more money for non-GMO products, because it's just to make agriculture more efficient. Unfortunately, most consumers don't know that. They just hear the words genetically modified and they lose their minds. So make sure that you always like kind of do your own research when you're going into stores, and kind of know that GMOs does not mean that it's bad for you by any means, because GMOs have really, really helped us become more efficient in agriculture. So I kind of just like to mention that in terms of this green revolution using improved genetics. So this kind of all stems from research in Mexico and India that resulted in wheat and rice with greatly improved yields. So these improved genetics resulted in greatly increased production, which reduced hunger by increasing the availability of food and at a lower price. Because if you have a lot more of something, then you can afford to lower the cost. Then if that is a little bit harder to find, you're going to have to charge more for it. So kind of the laws of supply and demand there. So in the early 20th century, there were a lot of research-based advances in the production of cereals. And so by cereals, I mean like cereal grains. So that would be like corn and sorghum and things like that. Not like production of cereals like Cheerios or whatever. So this led to better agronomic practices, and increase the use of fertilizer and irrigation, and greatly improve seed genetics. So the actual genetics of those seeds that were being used to grow these cereal grains. So hybrid corn was combined with genetic selection to increase the yields of corn. So you could get more corn out of a smaller area. So the advent of agriculture biotechnology with genetically modified seeds reduced losses due to weeds and other pests. And so that's a huge thing. So kind of along the lines of genetically modified organisms, a lot of people always get really upset because they're like, oh, it's genetically modified. Well, you can, and actually this has been done, if there's a plant that has a gene that can make a plant parasite resistant, that gene can be inserted into a grain, and then that grain is now parasite resistant. And so then you don't have to put as many chemicals and pesticides and things like that on the grain itself. So it can really, really be a good thing. So I always kind of just like to stress that. So just to kind of show you how this is all played out and how improved genetics have really played out with corn. Corn is a really, really big one. It's like the most popular cereal grain that everyone talks about in agriculture. So the U.S. average corn yield has increased tremendously in the 20th century. So from the 1800s to 1920s, you could see that the yield was about 26 bushels per acre. And if you're not familiar with the term bushel, for every cereal grain, it's kind of like a bushel equals a certain weight. And so for corn, 56 pounds is considered a bushel. Just to kind of give you an idea if you want to think of it in pounds. So that was at 26. So then you look at all of these numbers increasing, you drop down in 2004, and you can see that in 2004, we were at 202 bushels per acre. And that number has only gone up. I probably should have tried to find some more updated info since 2004, but that's what your book had. But so you can see that as massive progress that would not have happened without improvements in genetics. And so that was just in the U.S. Globally and in the world, corn yield has also improved dramatically. And so you can see in the U.S. that it's gone up even from that 202 to 282. So that's probably a more recent number. And then in China, it's gone up. Brazil, Argentina, India, and France, everywhere, corn yield has gone up globally, which is really, really good because we have an increasing population. So there have also been increases in yields for wheat, rice, and other cereal grains as well. It's not just corn, but like I said, corn is kind of the really big one. So as far as grain in the developing world, the Green Revolution brought genetically modified or genetically improved high-yielding dwarf wheat and rice to the developing world, particularly Asia and Latin America. So this, used in combination with improvements in agronomic practices like fertilizer and irrigation practices, led to a 6-fold increase in the production of grains, and China became a net exporter of grain. And why that's important is because China has the highest population in the world, and so they make so much food, but rarely do they actually export because they have so many people to feed. They actually import a lot of food. For example, like 80% of Smithfield's hog beef goes to China because they have so many pigs over there, but they cannot produce enough pork for all of their people. So if China was able to become an exporter to where they had so much grain that they could send it to other countries, that's a really, really big deal because they have so many people there that they really aren't usually able to do that. But because of these improved genetics, they had so much improvement in grain yields. So just kind of a key person that was important in all of this is Norman Borlaug. So he was born in 1914 in Iowa. And so Iowa and the Midwest and that whole section of the U.S. is kind of what we call like the Corn Belt. So that is where a lot of corn, the most of the corn in the country is produced actually. So it kind of makes sense that it kind of got started there. Or that he was from there. So he was the father of the Green Revolution. And so he actually led research at the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center. Yes, that is a thing. And it has a long acronym that's based on a Spanish name because this center was in Mexico. So basically what came out of this research was a high-yielding, disease-resistant dwarf wheat. So after this research, he persuaded leaders of countries that were developing to adopt new varieties of wheat and other cereals, including rice. So they started using these grains that had the improved genetics. And so he actually received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970 and later got the Presidential Medal of Freedom and Congressional Gold Medal. And he founded the World Food Prize that gives recognition to food and agriculture pioneers throughout the world. So he was a pretty influential person. So I kind of mentioned that corn is really the big one when we think of cereal grains that are used for agriculture and why improvements in corn were so important. So just to kind of give you a little background on corn usage. So it's used in food, like human food, for tortillas, cornflakes, corn chips, regular just corn on the cob, you name it. And it is also a major ingredient in livestock feed. So this is kind of where it gets into animal science, particularly for pigs, poultry, and feedlot cattle. Corn is huge. When I formulate diets, corn is easily 60% of their diet. So it's a really, really big deal to have improvements in yield of corn. It's also a raw material that's used to produce ethanol to add to gasoline, and corn silage can be used as a diet for cattle. And it's synonymous with maize in most of the U.S. So if you hear maize, that just means corn. In England, however, the word corn apparently means wheat, which is kind of just interesting, but they use a lot more wheat over there than we do. And so the word corn means the most prevalent cereal or grain that's kind of produced in a specific region, apparently. Which, I don't know. I just think of corn as corn. But I guess if you go to England and you say corn, they think you mean wheat. So kind of confusing there. But so a little bit about animal agriculture in the developing world. So livestock have a significant contribution to the poor in developing countries. So it's estimated that about 60% of income in developing countries comes from livestock. And so livestock can actually provide a route out of the poverty trap that we were talking about. So livestock can provide a source of cash by selling like byproducts or like milk and eggs plus hides. And also high quality nutrition can come from foods that are derived from animals. So like meat and milk and eggs all are really nutritious products that are really, really good for people to have, especially in the developing world. So livestock can also provide power for plowing. I know here we don't really typically think of them for that use anymore, but in developing countries that could still very much be the case. They also provide manure for fertilizing the soil. Dried cattle dung is used as fuel in Asia and Africa, so people will actually collect that and burn it. And then livestock can contribute to economic vitality in rural communities in the U.S. and in other developed countries as well. So that is all I have for just this brief introduction. I know it was kind of a lot of boring history, but that's kind of how the book starts things off to kind of give you some background about why it's important and just some things that have kind of gotten us to where we are today, improved genetics and things like that. So it will get a lot more interesting from here on out once we get into more of the sciencey type things and start talking about the animals. Does anybody have any questions on this lecture? I know it was mostly just a lot of numbers and terms, but questions? No? Any questions about anything else? Syllabus, Blackboard?
The PowerPoints, will they be available on Blackboard?
Yes, they should already be there, but if they're not showing up, let me know.
Okay.
I will double check, and because I can see them, but I'll double check and make sure that it's available. But they should be there, and they're already posted. So, like, if you wanted to print them out and bring them with you, you know, to lecture or something, they should already be up there. But I'll double check that. Tom, they should be available, right?
I can't remember. I think so. But something I was going to say, I am in the process of making our agribusiness program its own website. And I'll get the link. I'll put the link in the Blackboard classes sometime soon. I've actually got it on like my syllabus, and I'll try to like upload her slides in there. My slides for my classes are in there. There's links to the video recordings and audio recordings actually where they live. And I've also got some stuff in there for y'all to be able to interact with alumni and read alumni stuff. And just there's a bunch of stuff out there. So if whenever you get this link, you can save it to your computer so you can like get to the slides without actually having to go into Blackboard.
Okay.
But still go into Blackboard anyway, because there may be other announcements and other study guides and whatever other kind of stuff. But just the slides hopefully will be living in two places. So if one of them has an issue, you can get them at the other place.
Yeah, that's good. That's definitely good. But yeah, they should be available in Blackboard, but like I said, I'll check that and just make sure that I've turned everything on that I need to turn on. So if like you still can't see them by Tuesday or Wednesday, shoot me an email or something. Because what I see is kind of different from what y'all see on Blackboard. So
Yeah.
Any other questions? Nothing? Pretty quiet this morning.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing, I just never actually introduced myself to the half of you that don't know me. I live the other side of Danville, about 20 some odd minutes. So yeah, Megan, I go blowing through South Boston every day. I live on a family farm, beef cattle farm that just celebrated its 250th birthday last month or earlier this month. I can't remember the dates. And you know, that's an interesting milestone, though we may end up being a solar farm here in a couple of years, a good chunk of it. But I graduated from Virginia Tech with an animal science degree, but Leanne knows a lot more about animal science than I do, because I'm not going to tell you just how bad my grades were, but they were bad. Just because I can't memorize things, and there's a bunch of memorizing in anatomy and physiology that she was a teaching assistant for. I squeaked out with D's. So I'm just saying. So I can occasionally ask or answer an animal related question, but you know, just so you know, I'm doing more than just playing with computers. I'm living on a farm, and that's why I have a hour and a half to 2 hour commute depending on where I'm going, because I can't move the farm here and I can't move the college there. So oh well. But anyway, that's all I had to say on me. And drink sun drop.
All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions, then that's it, and I will see you on Wednesday.
Okay. Bye. Drive safe. Bye, Trigger.